Hey guys, welcome back to more Malicious Compliance Reddit stories. In this Ripe Stories video, imagine having your dream job ripped away by an arrogant VP whose brilliant idea was to outsource my entire IT team and replace it with 33 total rookies. They thought they could survive without us doing the heavy lifting, but spoiler alert, they couldn't. Let's dive right into the video. And the first one is titled, "Don't Mess with IT," posted on r/MaliciousCompliance. So not too far back in my career, I was working at a lighting design company. Making lighting fixtures for richer people costs a lot of money, and well, this company has pen and paper for inventory and work orders, etc., and we're trying to join the digital age. Well, in comes me, a college kid with a computer science degree and no experience. They say, "We will give you a raise while working our technical aspects and give you more work time." I had a wedding to pay for, so more money and time is a huge thing at this point in life, but I needed a decent PC to run the 3D modeling software, internet, the inventory system, and a lot of time to pull all the different models into a database. They got me a cheap PC, a poor internet connection, had no inventory system, and wanted a from the ground up full database in 6 months with no issues. They said they would check monthly on my progress to grade my tenacity, but now I go to work, I get the models built into a file type to be transferred to a database, and start scouting different servers I could use for this, cost effectiveness, or I could write my own program as a basic prototype to just get it done. It's been hell to work with the bosses as they keep using the cheapest trial software, and every time they do, it ends with me having to start from scratch again because they won't pay for a good system, swearing that they can easily save money. Finally, I have about 90% of them file done, and it's 2 weeks from the deadline. Christmas time and final exams for my certs. Well, then boss number 2 calls and tells me they forgot to check for the last 5 months and begins screaming how I was incompetent for not even having half of them done. I was bewildered, and he said to check form A2 for the list of pieces they wanted done. They never sent me that list. It was in no email, not in the team file share, just nothing. And he says, "Here's the file. Why didn't you say anything sooner? Get it done. I don't care what it takes. By the way, with this terrible performance, you're not getting a raise." So how was I supposed to know of a form that never existed? I look at the file, and it took 5 months to translate and store 300 of these files. With that form, he added another 1,300-ish. I was pissed. So cue my malicious compliance. They told me work from home and as long as it takes. So I made a macro with my PC and set it up to fill out those files, but the macro speed was limited by Google Sheets. Loading time may have purposefully slowed it down, who knows, so it was slightly slower than hand typing, but required no input from me. I was free to spend my time playing games, watching TV, etc. Well, about a week in and I get a call about me never clocking out for work. I told him to look at the files, and every time a file was added, it was clocked in the system down to the second. Never had I heard man so pissed about losing that much in wages. What pushed him over the edge was me telling him the money spent paying me for doing this was more than just giving me good software, but what I did, what it took to get it done. The paycheck was great, the time off was great, and they still don't know how a macro works. Update to the story, so it's now after Christmas break, past my cert exams, spent time with family, and I get told that we are having a meeting. I meet with the bosses who tell me that I won't be getting any form of raise. Typically we get one annually, and my supervisor recommended me highly for another one, and that I will receive no extra hours and I shall not exceed 20 hours. They knew about the wedding, my new apartment, etc., and they knew that would hurt my finances. Boss number 2 from before states how he could do it so much faster and better than I ever did, and he would handle it himself. They said that any information I had on the project had to be handed over. Flash forward 2 months to another meeting. You see, the files meant to go to the database. They were all wrong. He never sent them to the company they wanted to work with for the database until after the deadline, and only sent one file. The kicker is the formatting was wrong, file type was wrong, just everything. Now they were sweating bullets because they just had to pay me for all of that work with nothing to show, and it was all his fault for not checking. They say, "It's not too bad as long as I take the files I have and make these changes." I said, "I don't have any files." I sent them the files 2 months ago in an email and confirmed receiving it, and then deleted it off my PC, just like they said. Boss number 2 confirmed it, and I pulled up the email confirmation, but he never downloaded the files nor kept the email. Could I have told them that I didn't delete it from my sent folder? Sure, but they don't want to pay for an IT guy, right? Well, they signed me back to the project and to work from home. I get to repeat the macro usage. Now the fun part though, they kept asking me to fix the formatting to be a certain way, but kept not asking the database company if it was right before telling me to work. So I would spend 2 to 3 weeks with plenty of OT to fix up all the files and then get told that there's a different issue that needs to be fixed in all of the files, all 1600 of them. So after 3 to 4 months of video gaming, Reddit browsing, anime watching and collecting a nice paycheck, I get another phone call. Boss number 2 says I work too many hours and the limit is still true and I need to stop clocking so many. Well, going from the 55 to 60-hour weeks to 20 is gonna triple the time to correct mistakes. He states he doesn't care and they won't pay me if I work longer, which is illegal if I'm not mistaken. So cue new company, a machinist company sends me several emails about me working there. Apparently the code they use for their CNC is not too far off from the mechanics I learned in computer science and needed more people. Offered me 40 hours with OT, paid vacation time and holidays, which the current company never did, and higher pay too. So 2 weeks later, I'm working at a machine shop for the first time, higher pay, better hours, liking management and my new coworkers. I then hear from a friend still at the other place that they had to outsource the database creation for double what they were paying me, so company number 1 uses my new job to make some of their parts and they get to see me smiling every time they pick up parts. Every cent I made on them went to the wedding, been loving the new job and thanks for reading. It might not be the field I wanted, but it is a job I love. And yeah guys, I gotta say, that is one of the most important things in the world, to have a job that you love or at least like, because otherwise every single day is like torture if you ask me. Either way, the next one is another malicious compliance story and this one is an absolute banger. It is titled Boss Fires IT Team and Loses Millions. Also, if you enjoy the malicious compliance stories, please don't forget to like the video and leave a comment because that would really help me tremendously. So I worked for a major US telecommunications company for over 10 years. One of the jobs I had there was as an emergency overnight tech support for our major accounts. I'm talking about accounts like emergency services, traffic lights, the FBI, NASA and the White House. I personally fixed the White House Chief of Staff's phone twice. All of this was handled by 11 people in a call center that was one of 2 in the country that were open all night, mainly for customers who were overseas. Because we were such a small team and the people we dealt with were the overnight IT people at their various companies, we were on a first-name basis with many of the techs who called us. But then one day, the VP of our company decides to step down as VP and take a job as the head of another call center. His brilliant idea is to make his call center the only call center for all businesses and government accounts in the country, including the ones my team handled overnight. Naturally, this meant dissolving my team. We were all very upset, of course. I mean, we liked our job and only the best techs got to be on our team, and for good reason. When something we handled went down, it had to be taken care of fast, and some of the systems we dealt with were so obscure or old that no one at the company, except us and our daytime colleagues, even knew they existed. This also meant that we had to be ready to answer at a moment's notice, so we spent most of the night doing nothing, just waiting for a call. The companies and government entities paid extra for this quick response. Even so, over the years, my team kept getting assigned more and more little jobs to do between calls, which we handled easily because, well, we were the best. It was almost my dream job. So when we get word that our jobs are going to this other call center that until now was not even open overnight, we were upset, yet most of my team was still pretty supportive. We offered to train the new techs at the other call center, some of us even offered to travel there for a week or so to do it, but we were all turned down. Our last week on the job comes, and we are there mainly as backup for the new team in the other call center. We are not being routed calls, but we are ready on chat if the new guys have any questions. The questions start coming in, and they are not what we expected. Instead of asking about obscure, outdated systems that no one but us even knew about, the new team is asking us about things like how to fill out a timesheet for a shift that starts before midnight and ends after, and this was their supervisor asking me. We end up answering really basic questions that anyone at our call center, much less anyone on our team, would have known, and we all got a bit worried. Then the supervisor who asked me about the timesheets asks about how many calls we typically get in a night, and I say, oh, between 2 and 5 per person usually. Then he asks how many people were on my team. 11, I say. 8 to 10 on any given night. "Oh," the supervisor says, "we have 33. I wondered why we were getting so few calls." They did not have to do the little tasks my team did between calls either, they couldn't. They were not even trained for the calls they were getting. The next week my team was transferred into the normal overnight call queue, handling boring calls from people who didn't read or listen to the directions we gave them about how to make their phones work while overseas. A week after that, other regular overnight reps start asking me and the other former elite reps questions about systems that only we would know about, which was suspicious. A few days later, I get a call transferred to me and it's one of the overnight IT guys from the major accounts. I ask how he got hold of me and he says that the first guy he talked to transferred him to me. Turns out, of course, that the untrained reps at the new call center were still untrained, so they were just dumping the calls into my call center's general queue and hoping that out of the 60 or so techs working there, the one who would pick up would be from the former major accounts team. Since 3 of our 11 people had quit when our team was dissolved, the odds of that were pretty damn low, which meant it took multiple transfers, which meant they were not getting the help they needed in the time frame my company was contractually obligated to provide. I went to the director of my call center to let him know about this, hoping it would mean that since the new team was failing that hard, the company would see reason and reinstate my team again. But nope, my director informed me that the team would not, under any circumstances, be reinstated at our call center. I could tell he was not happy about this at all, so then came the malicious compliance. My director told me and every other overnight tech at my center that if we were transferred a call for a major account, we were not to touch it, as we were not authorized to handle those accounts. The next night, the accounts would not even open for us because our security clearance had suddenly been revoked. We were to transfer all such calls back to the correct queue. We were also instructed to forward any correspondence sent to us from the new major accounts team to our supervisors, whether chat or email, and in a few days the transfers to our center stopped. Now, I wish I could say that the company saw the error of its ways and my team was reinstated and everything went back to the way it was, but it didn't. Instead, the company hemorrhaged major accounts like crazy. We lost accounts whose monthly bills were in the millions of dollars due to our failure to keep the terms of our contracts. Barely a month after it was created, the overnight team at the other call center was disbanded and the jobs were outsourced. Then the outsourcers started transferring the calls to my center, and again I went to our director hoping against hope my team would be reinstated, but nope, the transfers stopped again and the company lost even more multi-million-dollar accounts. In total, we lost probably close to $10 million. Last year, the company announced a layoff of tens of thousands of employees. I wonder why. I saw the writing on the wall and got the hell out with the best severance package I could. So did my call center director. He was no fool either, all because some idiot executive had a bright idea and not even the slightest clue how to execute it. The next one is another amazing malicious compliance story that you don't want to miss. It is titled, "The $15,000 equipment is too expensive for your department to purchase? Well, why don't you just rent it for $48,000 a year?" Posted on r/MaliciousCompliance. Back in the days when 33.6 kilobytes per second modems were hot crap, I worked for the engineering department of a growing company. This company had started small. It was privately owned and the VPs had all put in a portion of their own money to start the company, and by this time in the story they were finally making a respectable 30 to 40 millions a year in profits, but they still acted like a small company, penny pinching, and our engineering department was designing circuit boards with embedded computer systems. And to program these, instead of soldering the microcomputer to the board, we would solder on a microcontroller socket and then plug in an in-circuit emulator that would pretend it was a microcontroller and allow the programmer to create the required program. This in-circuit emulator, or ICE, was made by Hitachi. It plugged into a free PCI slot on your PC and had a ribbon cable that would attach to the specialized microcontroller die that plugged into the socket. In short, it was a mess. It gave our tiny IT department headaches and it cost $15,000, and it was an absolute necessity for most of our most popular product lines, and there was only one of them, and we were renting it. It cost $4,000 a month, and the first month we had it, our CTO and marketing VP planned our whole new product line around this family of microcontrollers, so at the end of the month us engineers asked management to buy this for us, since we would be using it for a while. The engineering VP saw the price tag and told us to just rent it. Surely we would be done with it soon. Well, engineers being practical forgot about the objection and just put our noses to the wheel. The CTO in marketing made plans to keep us busy using this microcontroller line for a while. They pre-ordered a few million chips, and after a year, the VP of Finance asked about this recurring contract line item. They called the engineer who had originally started the contract. The engineer helpfully forwarded the approval from the engineering VP and his later email asking to buy it and the VP's reply where he demurred. By the end of the week, this toy was ours, along with the second one, since Finance determined that product rollout was being affected by not enough access to the equipment. Hitachi gave us the first one, stopped charging us, never asked for it back, and we paid $15,000 for a second one. No one got fired or demoted. But at the next department meeting, the engineering VP tried to tell us that we didn't have enough money to upgrade our PCs. That one engineer spoke up and said, "Would $40,000 cover it?" And let me tell you, the company found the money. And the next one is a really amazing malicious compliance story that you don't want to miss. So this happened about 2 years ago. I work in construction, but more specifically, I cut concrete. A lot of people are not familiar with my job, but all of you really need to know is that I don't pour any concrete. I use big diesel and hydraulic powered saws to cut and remove it. I work at a relatively small company, 15 employees, and we are the company to use for concrete cutting and removal in our area. I was the first employee hired at this company, and my bosses are amazing. They've been in the industry for 25 and 30 years respectively. We will call them Brad and Cody. They know what they are doing, and they still get out and work in the field and will outwork any of our employees. We were awarded a no-bid contract at a very large facility to cut and remove a very large section of their outdoor slab because it had cracked. This was routine for us. We could do it in our sleep, but it was still a large project. The reason we were given the contract but not held to a number was because they wanted it done right and fast, and they knew that we were the guys to do this, even though we are not always the cheapest. The customer requested us to bring extra equipment and specialized saws just in case, important later. The day comes that we are supposed to start, and they wanted us on site at 6:30 a.m. for a safety meeting. Brad and Cody went out while I stayed back to get my crews ready for the day before heading out to meet them. When I arrived at 8 a.m., they were still standing by their trucks just talking. I asked them how the safety meeting went, and they said that no one had shown up yet. Finally, they got there at around 9 a.m. and did not even acknowledge that they were late. We met the guy that was in charge of the project. His name was John. John said during the safety meeting that there would always be a few people around from his company to watch us while we worked. We figured it was weird, but no big deal. We ran a safety meeting after, and it was time to work. We got about a third of the project completed in one day. The entire time we were working, there were no less than 25 people standing around watching us work. We kept joking with them to just set up bleachers. It would be easier to watch that way. And as you can hear, Disney is already complaining about this story. Maybe I picked the wrong one. They made us call it quits at 4 p.m. so they could go home. Right about this time, we started to figure that there was something up with these guys. They did not care that we didn't get started until late and wanted us to end early. Yet a big part of us being there was to get it done fast. Either way, we figured we would still be able to get done in about 3 days and make record time for a project of this size, all the while making a fair amount of money for ourselves. The next morning, as we were getting ready to head out for the day, Brad received an email. It said, "While we can tell that X company are master operators with their machines, we feel as if they are operating in an unsafe manner by running multiple machines at once and request that they slow down to maintain safe working conditions. They also didn't try to make sure that our supervisors felt that they were safe throughout the day." Brad was pissed. We were called in to get things done fast, and not once had we done a single thing that could be considered unsafe. When we got to the job that day for the safety meeting, Brad had changed from "screw these guys, they don't know anything about what we are doing" to "okay, we are too fast? We will slow it down right down for them." At the safety meeting, John, the same guy who sent us the email, looked at us and said, "Okay, everyone knows what we are doing, let's get it done." He tried to end the safety meeting with that, but that is when my boss spoke up. He said, "Hold on, since no one is man enough to tell us in person and just want to hide behind their emails, let's get this straight. We are too fast and unsafe for you?" John became visibly uncomfortable and stammered out, "Well, there was a lot of people standing around and watching you yesterday, and I just felt that someone would get hurt if they decided to get closer to watch. I had set up safety cones with red danger tape strung between it and told no one to cross. We had taken proper safety precautions. If they didn't feel comfortable to have that many people watch, then don't have that many people standing watching and doing nothing." All Brad said was, "Okay, we'll be real slow, and if someone crosses our line, we shut the site down for an hour for another safety meeting." So then, time for the malicious compliance. We started up for the day. Something to note about our source tractors and other heavy equipment is that we have the ability to turn up the idle, or in other words, we can turn up or down the speed of the motor, so instead of everything moving normally and how it should, which is fast, everything is moving now at turtle speed. Brad told us all that if we ever sped up our machines that he would kick us off the job, even Cody, his business partner. I was cutting with our saw while Cody was in the excavator to remove the pieces that I cut. Brad was in the skid steer to haul the pieces to the dump truck. I would cut the concrete into a 6x6 piece, which would normally take me about 20 to 30 minutes. It was taking upwards of 3 hours for one piece though. After I would cut, Cody in the excavator would turn his machine on, slowly turn and stop, extend his bucket, stop, lower the bucket, stop, tilt the bucket, stop, pick up the piece, stop, turn and stop. Then of course drop the piece, stop, shut off his machine, all without idling up. Then Brad would start his machine and repeat the same process to load it into the dump truck. You get the point, it was painfully slow. After the first piece was ready to be pulled out and Cody started the process, John, who was just sitting on the sidelines pale-faced, crossed my line to ask if we were really serious, and at that point Brad screamed, "Shut down!" and we all stepped away for an hour for a safety meeting. John crossed the line 3 times in the first day and 8 times total throughout the project. His employees never once crossed a danger line. Effectively, John was the only one he should have been worried about in his email about getting too close and being in danger. John kept saying, "No way, you guys are being serious. What happened to what were you doing yesterday? You were so much more efficient." Brad just said, "I have in writing that you felt unsafe, so for the remainder of this project we'll be operating at a safe pace." It ended up taking us 3 weeks to finish at that horribly slow pace instead of 3 or 4 days at full speed. The best part, the head of the facility came out to see what was taking us so long. We showed him the email and he agreed with what we were doing. He told us that he hates John and that he's insufferable to work around. He said that the success of this project is directly tied to John's yearly bonus. He asked how much we were charging them and we told him that per piece of equipment and truck and saw that is one the site is being built to them by the hour, and that John had requested that we have nearly double the amount of equipment that we actually needed or used. The facility head just laughed and said, "Fantastic, I'll make sure you are paid in full. Don't go easy on us with the bill." So that is how we maliciously complied our way into charging about $200,000 for a job that should have realistically only been worth about $45K. I even got a solid $20,000 bonus because Brad and Cody are fantastic bosses and knew that we made a killing on that job. And the next one is a petty revenge story that you don't want to miss. It is titled, "Roommate Keeps Drinking My OJ, so I Teach Them a Lesson." So this is not a complicated story. My old roommate used to eat my food and drinks. Despite having several conversations about boundaries and not being a douchebag, nothing changed. So then, I faked being sick for 2 days over the weekend when he was home. And I drank directly out of the OJ container. I licked the edge of the pickle jar before putting the top back on. When some pickle juice ran over, I stuck my bare finger in the peanut. I used my finger to put cream cheese on a bagel. I made sure he noticed all of it. On Sunday he broke and asked me if I always handled food like that. I told him I thought it was dumb to dirty utensils when I'm the only one eating my food. Well, not only did that end my food being stolen, but he suggested that we each have our own drawers and shelves now in the fridge to prevent confusion. And yeah guys, thanks for watching, I will see you again tomorrow.